Stand by, because Adam is on the way, talking business this morning with Advanced Business Vision and also Morecrofts Solicitors. If you've got any questions, get them into as soon as possible.
On your mobile.
And on DAB across the North West and North Wales.
We are Wirral Radio.
With your latest Wirral Radio news,
Today's show with Deacon Blues, Real Gone Kid, and David Gwetted and Sam Martin, and Dangerous. Got myself, Adam Siddon, straight through till 12 o'clock today, and yet again, another jam-packed show. Business all this hour, we've got Donal Bannon from Morecrofts Solicitors and Paul Wharmby from the Advanced Business Vision. I keep on saying the Advanced Business Industry. I don't know why I keep on saying that, but we'll talk to the gents very, very shortly. If you have got a business, or you work for a business, or you're a boss of a business, and you need advice on your business, a lot of business in there, email your questions to studio@wirralradio.co.uk, or come on and speak to the gents yourself. Use them, it's free. Normally you've got to pay for this sort of stuff, but ring up, it's free. 0151 637 3737. Fountains of knowledge, believe you. Fantastic. Another going out song, Blonde and Alex Newell, and All Cried Out on 92.1 Wirral Radio, on DAB and online. Delighted to have the chance back in. We have Paul Wharmby from the Advanced Business Vision and Donal Bannon from Morecrofts Solicitors. Good morning, gents.
Morning, Adam.
Delighted. Good morning.
You know what? I didn't think I'd be sat here again talking to you.
Really?
I'm over the moon.
My goodness me. Thank you.
Well, I was on here covering, wasn't I? And now I've got the show.
You've got the gig. Love it.
Over the moon. So for people who've just tuned in for the first time, just a brief on who you two are.
Yeah, my name's Paul Wharmby. I'm the Managing Director of Advanced Business Vision Limited, management and business advisors based in Hoylake. Offer business advice and implementation plans to everybody in business, from a sole trader right the way through to a major company. We look at things like growth, development, marketing, sales, business law in collaboration with Morecrofts Solicitors, and Donal will give you a bit more about that in a second. Really, anything to do with business, any help people need, we're here every Thursday giving some, as you say, free advice.
And I'm Donal Bannon from Morecrofts, and I head up the commercial team. We deal with all sorts of businesses, be it sales or acquisitions, contracts, terms and conditions, employment, property, pretty much anything you can think of relating to business and how it operates.
Right, we have had some emails in.
Excellent.
And
news.
I've one that I wanted to cover last week, because I think it's such a massive thing now in business, and it's social media. And Bill's been in touch from Bebington. He said, how can social media help his business? And he wants to know what he should be doing. He's a bit old, so he isn't quite savvy on
He's
it.
a bit old, I love it. What are you looking at me for there, Adam? No, it's a pertinent question these days, because the way businesses now interact with their customers has changed rapidly, and more so over the last couple of years with the growth of social media and digital marketing, as we call it per se, grown and changed, and all now major forces in digital marketing, as I say. From my point of view, you need to post what I would call relevant information. A lot of people, think it's all about selling. I say no, it's not. It's about posting solutions, a bit of inspiration, and interesting facts that might be useful and helpful to your potential customers out there, that listening, that viewing public. So, obviously there's more and more tools and features than ever before out there. Things like scheduling programs, and I'm not going to mention any names for obvious reasons, but there's so many things out there that you can do. But I think people, business owners particularly, need to learn how to use those tools, and there are many organisations out there who can help you do that. Once you've mastered the tools, it gives you an understanding marketing your business on social media. The big ones, as we know, Facebook for business, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, etc. There are more. Marketing has gone visual over the last few years. It really has, so you need to be aware of that. So my advice would be, when you're posting things on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever, make sure you capture a visual as well, because people react to visuals. Obviously on the main social media platforms, the use of hashtags is quite key. Make sure you know how to use hashtags, when to use hashtags, what hashtags are actually used for. There's so many things that people need to embrace and get on with it, but it really is about understanding how you want to market your business. It's about, as we said many weeks ago now, about branding, creating awareness. And I think if people and businesses embrace that today, if businesses embrace the fact that it's about constant sustainable feed, it will work. It takes time, like everything does in business, and we say that every week, time in doing these things. And as we always say, people in business today have got so many things to do. You know, how do they find that time to drive social media, to drive marketing, to drive business planning, whatever it may be? You've got to find time to make it a success. And if you can't find the time, find somebody who can. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's, as Paul was saying there, it's all about sustained investment in your time as well. There's no point just, setting up various pages and so on. You need to keep it updated. You need to just lose interest and drift away. It's quite obvious how outdated. And as Paul also said about the visuals, wanting people to who you are and what you're like, because people buy from people. The best means of getting business in, but to introduce yourself to potential customers, a video was great, and it also means that you'll probably get promoted through the rankings in terms of Google searches and so on as well.
Are there many legalities in business and social media, Donal?
Do you mean in terms of setting it up, or?
Yeah.
No.
And things you post as well as...
No, obviously, as I would always say, you must read the terms and conditions for these sites before you join them, but they are pretty routine and standard, because you don't want to be saying something which isn't true, which could be really particularly be plagiarising something that somebody else has said either. But if you stick to what you know about your own business and so on, it's hard to say.
Biggest things with any form of digital marketing is make all of the platforms that you as a business use work together. Now, a lot of people don't do that. They have a website. Fantastic, and it stands alone. They have a Twitter account, which stands alone. They have a Facebook account, which stands alone. Bring them all together to drive traffic to your website, because all business, isn't it? So try and get the traffic into your main platform, which has got to be your website. As Donal said, put useful information on that website. Use video that your customers are wanting to see and hear, and away you go.
See, I didn't realise how easy it was to actually get Google points, shall we say, just by simple updates and videos and links to other websites. It's so influential for your business.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of companies out there who you have to pay to search engine optimization, they call it, to what your content of your website, and so that anybody searches it jumps up the key. So much better to take the cheaper options if budget's a concern, and do the things we've suggested, and putting up pictures, videos and so on, because they're more likely to go up the search engine of their own accord.
There are ways and means to do that, and it would take an entire show to give you all the information on how to do it, obviously. But you mentioned Google, so we'll just home in on Google for a second. Google Plus is a totally invaluable tool. People need to be aware of the power of Google Plus, because Google, as we know, is possibly the #1 search engine. There are others out there, but in real terms, we're talking about a major player here, and people are familiar with that term and familiar with this sort of site, etc., etc. So understand the power. Understand what you need to do, and as Donal said, you need to be doing these things pretty quickly. It's part of your business. It's a part of your strategy, your plan for growing your business. It needs to be done. If you can't do it, find somebody who can. Simple as that.
So there you go, Bill. Make sure you get on social media.
Absolutely, well done, Bill. Yeah.
If you don't know, go and get a course in it as well. If you've got any questions for the lads today, it's 11 o'clock. It's all free. Give us a ring, 015 1637 3737. Don't forget you can tweet us as well. I'm not sure whether I've been in the dark room for a few weeks, but Adriana Tirana, what a fabulous voice that woman's got, and that's all right with me on 92.1. We've got Donal Bannon. Why do I keep on calling Donal Bannon? I do apologise profusely.
How rude.
Donal Bannon, I apologise.
No
from Morecrofts Solicitors and Paul Wharmby from Advanced Business Vision. They are our business gurus. They are here every Thursday from 10 till 11, giving you your free business advice. Don't forget, you can get in touch and get your questions on the air. We've got loads of questions to get through, and one maybe that Donal can answer for us from Claire. Sure. She's been in touch. She said she wishes to retire her company, and does she have to see shares to, or give her shares to other shareholders, to new people?
Right, Claire. Yes, I mean, it rather depends on whether, in fact, you have a shareholders' agreement or not. This is a document which the shareholders can sign up to. As I said in previous weeks, it basically dictates when the shareholder wants to sell, who they have to sell the shares to, how the shares will be valued, etc. I don't know if you have one of those. If not, then what you need to do is look at the company's articles. These are the document that was drawn up at the time the company was formed. You may not have even read it that before, but this is a good time to start. That will usually say that in the event that one of the shareholders wanting to sell, they have to sell the shares to the other shareholders. That's normally the case. What it probably doesn't do, unfortunately, is tell you how you go about valuing your shares. The first step, if you're thinking of selling your shares, really is to get some proper advice in terms of what they're worth. And then once you've done that, then you go to the other shareholders and you say, right, this is what I'm prepared to sell my shares for. Then they have a limited time to come back to you and say, yeah, we'll buy the shares at that price. Or if they don't, or they're not interested, then you're free to sell them to someone else. But usually for not less than what you offer to the other shareholders, so you can't just simply make an outrageous offer and then take a much reduced offer to someone you want to sell. It's important, obviously, because the other shareholders want to make sure that they're not going to be in business with someone who they don't know or perhaps don't even like. So, you know, that's why these things are drawn up usually, so that the shares have to be sold to the existing shareholders. They remain in control of the business then. How
do you work out the value of a share?
It rather depends on how long the business has been trading for, how profitable it is, what its turnover is, what its long-term contracts are going to be worth. If it's a relatively young business, it doesn't really have substantial profits and so on, then a very broad brush approach is to look at net profitability and say it's making net profits of £10,000 after tax. Then perhaps a multiple of that, usually 3 times, might give you an indication of what the entire shareholding's worth. Not just yours, but the entire company's. So if you're a 50% shareholder and the company's shareholding's worth 30,000, you'd obviously be worth 15. Otherwise, looking at it as perhaps 1 time's turnover. So, you may have £100,000 business, which on the books looks as if it's going to be, a really good business. It's always going to be improving on its turnover and profitability. It may be that turnover's a better guide in terms of what the shares are worth, but there's no substitute really for getting professional advice on this. That's certainly a broad brush approach to it, but it gives people an idea really of whether they're wasting their time insisting on millions for the shares and only worth a few thousand.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. The 2 models that Donal's mentioned are the 2 most out there, so to speak, but as we say every single week, shareholders agreements, partnership agreements, whatever it is, make sure they're in place, make sure they're up to date, make sure they're legally binding. Speak to someone who knows what they're doing, get a solicitor basically early on to sort these things out, so as and when you do need to do something with your business, you're covered and everybody else is covered as well. Simple.
We have an email in, gents, of Dennis Roberts. Yeah, he wants to know, what is a pricing strategy and why do you need one?
Pricing strategy, fantastic question. Yeah, pricing strategy would be part of your total marketing plan. We talk about strategy quite a lot in business. People think strategy is about, I'm going to raise my business turnover by 20%. It's not. A strategy is a complete vision of how you want to do your business and where you want to be. But a pricing strategy, basically, I would imagine he's thinking about putting together some pricing for his market, putting some pricing together maybe for a new product or a existing line that he wants to push out to maybe a new market. So basically he needs to look at some key drivers from a pricing perspective. What will the market take? What is the market price and value? How can he differentiate his pricing offering or his service offering from his competitors? Because I'm presuming he's in a competitive Me Too market. That means there are other people out there. Would it be wonderful if there was only you in the market selling your product? Sadly, that's not the case. So from a pricing strategy point of view, he needs to look at the market he's going to, the pricing that's out there, how can he be competitive? And we touched on this last week when we mentioned about prices as part of the marketing mix, if you remember that. And we said, a lot of people look at how they're going to approach a market and a range of customers, and a lot of people think they need to compete purely on price. Well, I agree that may be part of the plan, but look at the bigger picture. What can you add to your services that increases your value as a supplier of a product or a service to your customers? It's not all about price. So when you're looking at your pricing strategy, look at those value-added elements. What else can you add that doesn't mean you drive your price down? Because quite simply, if customer A wants to buy a product and they're buying it from 2 suppliers and there is a price war going on, some point. Therefore, your product or service will be devalued. So look at what else. Know the prices out there from competitors and really strategy right for your business to make it sustainable and profitable, but also for your customers, because you need to make sure that you service your customers.
Obviously, when you're thinking about pricing, you need to look at how much it's costing you to supply this product or service. There's no point having a race to the bottom. You need to make sure that if you're in business, you're going to make some sort of profit from it. And obviously, you probably need to set out at the start what your gross profit margin is going to be. And as Paul says quite rightly, it's not extra value you can add to your service or goods that people want to come back to you time and time again. It's sorted out for them. Again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier about word of mouth. That's often critical. There's a charging. Yeah. But that shouldn't be the final determinant.
Yeah, I agree. The point Donal made very valid about the profitability side of things. You know, I was with a client a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, I've got this fantastic new opportunity which I'm going to go down the road with. And I said, fantastic, what is it? Talk to engineering companies, which he was manufacturing or bringing in from China. You're marketing out, have you got everything in place? Yes, he said. I'm going to... And he went silent. He said, what do you mean? I said, how do you came up with it? Well, I think that's what it's worth, and that's what we're going to do. As Donal says, understand your costs. What does it cost for you to bring that product in from China or wherever it may be? You know, what margin do you want to add on to that to make it a saleable product, to give your company profitability? And then, will that price then be sufficient for you to allow you to sell products to the marketplace? No good pitching a price out there that A, devalues the product and goes down, so you're driving to the bottom. But ultimately, no good having a price out there if you're never going to sell it. More importantly, no good having a product that you're going to sell if you're not going to make any profit.
Indeed.
Simple.
And a simple bit of market research that'll help you out as well.
Do your homework. Yeah. Do your homework, as we say every week.
Right, we have another email in which we'll go through in a minute off Sarah. It's a bit of a long one, so we'll print it out for you.
Okay.
On the way for you, got Kaz Chiefs playing for you next.
If you're buying a new car this spring, make sure it has digital radio. Ask your car dealer.
92.1 Wirral Radio on DAB and online with the Kaiser Chiefs and Ruby, our business expert, Donal Bannon from Morecrofts Solicitors, and Paul Wharmby from Advanced Business Vision in the studio. Good morning, gents.
Morning again, Adam.
Morning again, Adam.
We have an email in off Sarah. It's a bit of a long one, but I've given you both a copy of it.
Yep.
She said, hello, I've came here for help and advice. I've been having problems with my landlord for about 1 year, and he always tries to cause me problems. He wants to sell property, but I have a lease still until 2020. I was late paying my rent. I was waiting for payment to clear, and I was due to pay on the 1st of each month. I'm now in a position to pay as funds have cleared, and landlord has sent the bailiffs in on Friday night when I wasn't there. Found out at 7 a.m. this morning when I turned up, and I have spoken to the bailiffs and offered to pay. However, they will not take payment, that they are saying that they were sent to take control of the premises and not collect rent. Is this not what the bailiffs are for, simply to collect rent? It doesn't seem right, but they're saying that is landlord's choice, and he's chosen to evict them. A bailiff's not going to mention which ones they are. He said he will come down and allow them access to the to remove tools and equipment. However, it'll need to be a pre-booked time slot. It's loads of equipment built over 5 years, including ramps and all sorts. The bailiffs are not helpful, only stating it's the landlord's choice, and they have no control. They are only acting on instructions received. Is there anything she can do?
Yeah.
That's a very sorry tale, Sarah. You don't say really what problems you've been having with your landlord for over a year. It sounds from what you say he wants to sell the property, so perhaps he's just using this as an excuse to get rid of you. I'm not entirely sure about that. But you say you've got a lease until 2020, so obviously, you know, the first thing to do is actually to look at that lease itself, and also if you signed anything at the time you also signed the lease, you may have signed what we call a waiver from the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954, which offers you protection in these sort of circumstances. So you need to go back and check exactly what you signed and what the lease provides for. You say you're late in paying rent. Obviously, again, we don't know over what period of time this rent has gone into arrears. But usually in a lease, the fact you haven't paid the rent entitles the landlord to take possession of the property. There is normally, an opportunity to remedy a breach, such as non-payment of rent. You'd be required, after service or demand from the landlord, to pay it within, say, 14 days. If you haven't done that, then the landlord is entitled then to take possession of the property and instruct bailiffs. I presume this is a commercial property, and therefore bailiffs are entitled to break in. They don't need a court order to do so. And, it is the landlord's choice. If he simply wants to take the property back, that's a matter for him. He doesn't have to pursue the arrears of rent, but of course he could do that at a later stage. You should be given unreasonable access to remove the items which are in the property, and as you say, it's obviously built over 5 years. There's probably a considerable amount of that. I don't know whether it's too late for you to actually have a meaningful conversation with the landlord. He can obviously tell the bailiffs to stand down, and if you pay the rent up front, perhaps you'll have a change of heart. But, you did say he's been after this property back for some time. Perhaps he wants to redevelop it and so on. He's taken advantage of the situation, but if the lease allows him to do this, and you haven't signed or you have signed a waiver of your rights, then perhaps you are stuck with this, unfortunately.
I think that, from my limited experience in the legal side of things, I would say absolutely right. Very, very sad tale, and one we don't really want to hear about in these times of sort of growth and development for businesses, but hey, it happens. I think from my point of view, as Donal said, I think maybe a meaningful conversation with the landlord could be in order. But again, how far down the line are we now with this when the landlord has clearly instructed bailiffs to seize the property?
Well, it's more than that, actually. Obviously they've taken possession,
yes,
and
exactly.
they've probably changed the locks by this stage. So it's not as if they haven't decided what they're doing. They're
doing it, yeah, exactly.
The question is whether it can be reversed, and that only the landlord really can help her out in the situation, unless she still has rights which she hasn't signed away.
Yeah, and this issue about the time slot, I think that's right, because it's the landlord's property at the end of the day, and all the bailiffs are doing are acting on the landlord's instructions, providing a service, and while that in itself is frustrating for Sarah, because she can't negotiate, she can't really talk to the bailiffs because they're doing their job at the end of the day. The time slot issue, maybe just speak to the landlord and say, when is it convenient for me to come and talk to you about this? When can we get things moved? Whatever. But it sounds like we're beyond resolution here. It's a very sad situation, to be honest.
It's very sad. And Sarah, let us know how you get on. Don't forget you can get back in touch with us as well on the phone, email, text, whatever. Get back in touch and let us know if you have a resolution. Another one in, decided to call it a day as we can no longer work together. Doesn't see what should up the assets of the business.
Right, Phil. Agreement in place. This is again an agreement between partners which sets out, what each have contributed towards the partnership itself when it was set up on an ongoing basis, and what's going to happen if one of them wants to leave or the partnership comes to an end. If you don't have one of those, then unfortunately we have to go back to the old Partnership Act of 1890. I mentioned this in previous weeks as well. A very archaic piece of legislation, and it assumes, which means that once all of the debts are paid, again, how do you divide up the assets? Assuming that there's enough assets there to clear off all of the, rather than simply selling them and taking the money each of the assets are, and you say, right, well, I'll take that piece of recording equipment and you take those musical instruments, whatever it may be, as long as there's an equal split and everyone's happy, that's fine. But obviously you must make sure that all the debts are paid first.
Absolutely.
How do you go about it if it's a social enterprise? Because that's different, isn't it?
Well, that would be a company, not a partnership. I presume when he talks about a partnership, he is talking about a partnership, and not, as some people think, that because they're in business together, it's a partnership, even though they've actually set up a limited company. Winding up companies is a different state of affairs. Again, you'd have to have to pay all the debts off first of all. Normally, something like a social enterprise partnership or company would have to, if there's any surplus left over, then that money would have to go to another company with a similar purpose, something that would share the same not-for-profit aims, rather than going back to the individuals involved, because it's a community enterprise.
Fair enough. One more before we have to call it a day. So sadly left this
it's gone quickly again.
It has gone far too quickly. We could do this till 12 o'clock with great ease. Lewis has been in touch. He lives in Oxton. He said, how can I ensure that I get paid on time for work that I've done? Now, we've all been in this situation. We've done the work. 3 months later, you're still waiting for a cheque in the post.
Absolutely. Well, we mention this most weeks. Healthy cash flow is key. Profit, very, very interesting. Very, very good. We need profits, but cash flow cash is king, cash flow is king, and it can be the difference between failure or success of many businesses. Now, as you've just said, a lot of businesses see late payment, as I'm going to call it, as a fact of life, and I've got to put up with it because you know what? That's the way it is. But there are many, many things that you can do to help alleviate that situation. And the first one is in Donal's domain, which is make sure your company's got signed contracts. Yeah, that's the first one. You know, make sure all your customers clearly know your payment terms. Make sure that these terms are clearly described on any of your documentation that is appropriate, but more importantly on your invoices.
No, I'm sorry, I'll have to disagree with you.
Oh, go on then. Oh,
yeah, invoices are normally raised after you've done the deal. They're post-contractual. So there's no point having your terms and conditions on your invoices unless there's a long period of trading between you. They're not going to be bound. They're not going to form part of the contract. Much better to have your terms and conditions drawn up and signed off by your customers, confirming that they've read them, understood them, and agree that they are going to be the terms of the deal. And within those terms, you'll have something called time is of the essence. That means time must be made punctually, and if payment isn't made, then there's going to be interest, usually at a penal rate, for late payment. Yeah. If this is a business-to-business thing, also there's a late payment on commercial debts, which allows you to charge additional sums by way of compensation for late payment. Every time you have to write a letter to demand payment, you get an extra fixed fee and so on. So again, it's important to have your terms and conditions looked at, make sure that they protect you as much as possible. I'm not clear from his email whether when he says it's late, what sort of industry he's in. I mean, obviously in the construction industry, for example, there may well be terms agreed in terms of, I don't get paid or I won't pay you until I get paid, which was very common until quite recently when it was effectively banned. You're not allowed to do that any longer, and maybe he's been fobbed off. So again, I'd recommend he takes some legal advice on that in relation to see whether he can recover the debt that's outstanding. I appreciate that you don't always want to push the matter, because if you've got a good relationship, it might be that you don't want to upset it by getting too aggressive about it. But at the very least, speak to the person who owes you the money, explain the difficulties that it's having, the effect it's having on your business, and try to encourage them to pay earlier rather than late. And also perhaps even consider some sort of discounting. So for early payment, we'll knock 5% off or whatever it might be, just to encourage that cash flow to come through and enable your business to survive. It's
about communication at the end of the day, and I totally take on board what Donal says. Have that contract in place, speak to your customer, make sure they understand how your business needs to perform. It's key, but make that contact. If the payment's delayed, phone the person up. Have a contact in the accounts department or whatever that you are comfortable with speaking to, who can be your champion in that client business. It's never easy, but it has to be done. Payment and cash flow have to be monitored. It's key to your business. There are many, many things that you can do to drive that, as we've said. But, just make sure that you're on it, as we keep saying. Don't just work in your business, work on your business as well.
Lovely. I could ask you some more questions, but we've got to go to the music.
Not a problem.
Quick one before you go. How can people get in touch with you too if they want to speak to you outside the radio?
As always, that's fine. We've got a dedicated phone line. It's 0151668 0363. 0151668 0363. Website is morecrofts.co.uk. advancedbusinessvision.com. We're both active on Twitter at Morecrofts or at ABV_limited. Simple as that.
And if you go on there now, there's a nice photo of you two in the studio as well.
Thanks, Adam.
Once again, gents, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And they're back same time next week. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can get in touch via the radio as well. Send them in studio at wirralradio.co.uk for any business advice. As you see, it could be about anything, to be fair. Get in touch with them. Tell you what they don't know isn't worth knowing. I caught you watching me.